Hello and welcome to today's session on digital strategy for business growth. And we're primarily talking to board members and business managers and owners today. And I'm delighted to be joined by Givi Kakaya today, which I think today will feel a little bit like Back to the Future, Givi, when we start going through some of it. And that will make some sense at that point. Let me just welcome to today's session.
I definitely agree, Edward. Definitely agree. And the Back to the Future is probably what you're referring to, is that how our collaboration in many ways started was exactly related to how we can increase the competence in Sweden Inc. related to digital for board members and management. And it's quite interesting to see that we're back here because of the topic that you and I discussed, that we're here again.
Exactly. I'm Edward Nugent. I'm the founder of Digital Scorecards, worked with this stuff for quite some time. The guts of 20 years, early Google AdWords days. Today, we're going to be talking very much digital strategy, but it's based on reality. Just to give you context, yesterday I spent half my day on Shopify setup and localization issues. And I spent the other half of my day fighting with some setup on Amazon because we're working with clients setting them up there for selling in the UK now. And you get up to your neck in detail. And that's part of the digital age, as it were. But today's session, we're actually not going to talk about those details. We're going to talk about what they mean and what we've found out over the past number of years. And what it actually means for board members and management, and why we've kind of come full circle here. And as Givi mentioned, he's joining me here today. We've worked together for, I think we first met in 2016. And since 2018, we've been working together. Quick intro maybe for yourself, Givi.
Sure. Thank you, Edward. No, as you mentioned, it's been a few years, and the area within digital is, of course, something that I think enriched our business tremendously when we started to collaborate together. Because, in my opinion, when I first joined Kunskapspartner in KP in 2014, I believe, and we started talking about digital, it was such a great timing because so many of our clients and customers, primarily management teams, were discussing their initiatives and their strategy in terms of digital development. And we found it very difficult to understand whether that was related to automation in terms of their manufacturing processes, or if it was related to their finance solutions, or what turned out to be our direction that we took in digital development together with you, related to digital development in marketing and sales, and how to actually knowing your customer, how to build businesses around sound processes, and that's the starting point for how we work together. And this is something that is a part of what we do today, both together, Edward, as well as in our individual engagements. And I guess this is the perfect timeline for where we started, and we're back to it now from 2018. This was a national project that we ran for the Swedish economic agency called Tillväxtverket. And we did so for about 2 to 3 years. And every year there was, let's say, a new theme, an area, whether that was digital strategy for SME, or data as the strategic resource, or focus on growth. And these were all national initiatives throughout these years that we fortunately had an opportunity to work with and drive tremendous success, not only for the businesses that were participating in the programs, but also for these national development agencies such as Region Skåne, Packbridge, Almi, or Tillväxtverket. And I think today will be a lot about that process and those projects that we, of course, have worked on, but more importantly, what have we covered? What is the common denominator of all of this? And why does it relate so well to boards and management individuals? And why is it a necessity today to understand how the business development is from a strategic perspective and from a board or owner's perspective as well? So I'm very looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to any questions that we might have, and hope that we can answer them.
Exactly. And Swedish or English, it doesn't matter in these sessions. A mixed bowl in the audience. Just for context, there's about just over 4,000 companies went through this. And then in detail workshops, 450 companies. So it's based on a lot of data, a lot of findings. And then in addition to that, we both have our own private clients that we work with in detail, just like some of the stuff I was working yesterday. One in clothing, one in new perfume, another one in distillery business, all kinds of stuff. Same kind of principles and challenges. Companies that went through this, just at least to give you an idea, for we're not making this stuff up. It's of those that went through the workshop and who answered the surveys at the end, it's 98.6% said this will help them grow their sales. This is one of the reasons we're here. This is one of the reasons we're now looking at boards and management again. We started that in 2018, and we kind of, I won't say we left it, but we moved towards a lot of the smaller SMEs. So the management and the boards are the same in many cases. And we're finding clues here as to how we can work with companies and help companies along the way. And we want to share a little bit of that today. Now, this is a starting point. Funny enough, everyone can nod with this. Some people will disagree, and I will say, absolutely, you have the right to be wrong. I don't mind that at all. But the more time you spend on this, the more time you realize what defines your business. And it ain't the industry you're in. And the more you embrace this, of you're in the business of marketing your business, the more success you're likely to have. And I'm going to show you why as we go through this today. I'm going to come back to this as well, because too few companies, and I'm actually, if I step back from the whole thing, I would say too few people understand what marketing is. A lot of people confuse marketing with advertising and think advertising is marketing. It's not. It is one piece. It is one tool. It's great for scaling, and there's one or two other reasons you use it, but that's it. It's not marketing. So understanding what this means. Now, this is what's going on out there. Companies, ours included, clients included, are trying to basically sell to their client base, get them to repurchase, hold on to as many as we can, get them to be advocates, and we're working this funnel. We just are. This is what you're doing consciously and unconsciously. And you're doing that with a lot of different tools. And on the left-hand side is a classic kind of funnel. What we tend to find is there's a lot of lack of structure, a lot of random actions, not as much structure and strategy in place. And we get an agency and they'll give us some traffic. Some of it converts, some of it doesn't. They turn it off and we stop. People build websites, not quite sure why. What's the goal? And I don't mean that in a facetious way. I just mean they're building sites rather than thinking, well, what's it going to do? What do I need it to do? And this is where you begin to get more fundamentals of marketing, not digital marketing. Digital is just a channel. That's another change, I would say, of thinking. It's the most important channel for most companies. But a lot of it's confused with tactics. Now, here's a reality check. So if you do agree with me and say, yeah, marketing is an important aspect, and yes, marketing should be the business we're in, right? Marketing our business. This is the reality over the last 3 years. And I've actually screened this out for just those who did the Digital Scorecard Pro, which is basically you answered about 100 questions. And it's roughly speaking divided into a third, and a third. So you have pre-sale, the sales process, and post-sales. Lead generation, lead to sale, after sale. Call it what you want. It's the same process for companies and how they go through it. Now, when I designed the Digital Scorecard, I set targets. Where would you want to be? And that's the red line. And I had that as a minimum target. If I was saying we want to show world class, you're on the yellow line up here, right? Just what I'm drawing on top of. This is where the companies are today. Now, you then look at the economy and you start looking at companies and the struggles companies are having to sell. Some of it begins to make sense. Because if your line is down here, if your level of sales and marketing is down here, and if it's effectively your digital strategy is not stacking up, of course you're going to have problems selling. And this is what we're finding all the time. Some more data. This is a survey from the Swedish E-Com Association. How are you doing with lead generation? The average is 4.7 on a 10-point scale. Now, I don't know about you, but if I'm hitting below 50% on something, I'm not overly happy about it. It means you're, actually in this case, you're below average. And I think average on sales and marketing is pretty poor. So we can see a problem here. I'm not going to do too many of these, but it kind of paints a picture. What's the biggest marketing challenge you have in a business? This is from 200 small to medium-sized companies in Sweden. Getting more customers, says 40%, 44%. Becoming known, cash flow, getting leads. They're the biggest marketing challenges. Now, there's drivers of these challenges, and I put it to anybody that the main driver of this challenge is that marketing and sales is not at the heart of a business. I can't tell you, and I'm sure you'll have your own examples on this, but the amount of times we come across companies with fantastic products, but yet very poor sales. It happens way too often. And for me, the core root cause of that problem is that the companies think we build a great product, and of course people are going to want it and buy it. And a bad product, in my world, will beat a good product every day of the week if it's marketed correctly.
No, I would say that I certainly agree, and I think that anyone who is in this room that has experience in understanding both business development, but also how to build a strong, let's say, presence in many ways, it is often that you find a structure, a methodology, something that makes it stick and makes it work. And I work a lot with entrepreneurs that are just starting out. I work with companies that have more established companies, but maybe have relied very heavily on, let's say, a sales organization and lost a lot of customers along the way. And now that they need to rethink how they actually market and how they actually sell, then we end up missing the picture a little bit of how to actually get it in front of the right type of people. And I think one thing to highlight is exactly what you're talking about earlier too, that it needs to go back to the fundamentals first. Knowing who is your customer. It's not about just digital. Digital, like you said, is a channel that really stands with me today. We need to find ways of actually knowing who has the biggest or greatest problem or need for what we do. And then after, look at how do we get it in front of them to the best possible way. And it's a little interesting to see that many companies not maybe also knowing. We see here other and becoming known. Sometimes they don't even know what it is that they need to work on often. And once you get into I would always say, if you double tap on the fact of getting more customers, it's often also getting more new customers, which I think is a good highlight too. They might actually have existing customers, but they just haven't really done much with it. And that's, to me, the strategic part of where do we start and how and so forth. So
hence the focus more on boards and management, because they can drive this stuff. Yeah. Whereas I think the tech industry has kind of hijacked marketing by having all these SaaS tools. It's a bit like what AI is doing now. Everyone's focusing on that. Everyone's focusing on ad platforms. We're forgetting about the customers, forgetting about the business, forgetting about the principles. So what's the role of a board? What's the role of management? Well, actually, it should be to drive the business, not find the nicest new tool. It's what we're finding more and more. And I know you can't be with us the full session, so I forgot to mention, but it's great that you could join us today anyway. I know you have to leave in half an hour or something, but we stay as long as we can. What I come back to is every business has a product or service, and you've got to be good at this, because if you haven't, you have to just make it better. But to be good at marketing is going to give you the success. because without it, a good product won't sell. As I said, I would bet on a bad product with good marketing every day of the week. All you have to do is walk on the high street, find everything on the high street today and see which is the best product here. And 9 times out of 10, the most popular is not the best, but they're the best marketing, especially when it comes to the small to medium-sized companies. So when we see that, we see, okay, on one side, the surveys of companies is, we're not doing so great. We don't rate ourselves as being very good at it. On the other side, we see, well, the only way to succeed here is through sales and marketing. But at the same time, nobody's focused on it. We're just adding it on to the company at the end. So who's going to fix this problem? It won't be the tech industry. They just want you to buy more tools. And there's loads of them, and they're great fun. But that won't fix the problem, you know? So we think there is a role here for board members in particular, because they should set the direction of a company. They should be asking the right questions of a company. It shouldn't just be compliance. Now, I have sat on boards and I've seen some that the only thing they're going through is the motions, ticking boxes, going through a protocol. Companies going down the tubes, but we're following the protocol. I think that doesn't sit very well with me, because to me, the two most important things in your company is your staff and is your clients, because they're going to build the future. They will drive your investment. They will get your return on investment. That's why they're more important actually than the investor. Yeah. So how do you help this as a board member? And what else can you do? And this is what we want to have the conversation about today. Givy and I run this program. So next week, we have another 12 companies, I think, coming through this program we're doing. And to be honest with you, they'll all leave and they'll all go back and they'll say, yes, 98.4%. So out of the 12, 11 point something will say this will help them with their sales. And we know this happens every month for the past 5 odd years. It's 12 companies out of the hundreds of thousands out there. So if companies are going to stand a chance, this needs to scale. We need to get more board members and management actually putting marketing at the center of the business, not as an add-on. And that's why we're talking about this today. As a backdrop, and again, we go through this very quickly, Gibby, it's just as a backdrop, this is the process we have used to get to these conclusions and to meet these companies. I don't know if you want to step us through this one. We can go fairly quickly through it, yeah?
Sure, absolutely. The model is quite straightforward in terms of understanding how your digital strategy should be built. We base it off of 3+1 process. And first part is to understand where you are today, where your strengths are, where your weaknesses are, which is one of the core foundations of the framework that you have worked out, Edward, the digital scorecard. For me, it's fantastic. It really is a game changer once you really understand and do the details, because you really see where are we weak, where are we strong in lead generation, lead to sale, and after sale. And from a strategic mindset and perspective, as well as any board member or management level person, one would see the big picture, see the wood from the trees, as you always say. And that gives us the foundation of where we are today. But then we also need to understand, well, how should we have it? And in terms of strategy, we should understand where we are today and where we should go. And to fully understand in digital where we should go, we need to have the customer's mindset. So we need to understand how our customers buy, what their need is, what their problem is. And those two together is the base foundation that will give us a digital game plan. It will provide us with actions we should do more of because we know that they work. It should give us actions that we know we should improve because we're not as good at it. And sometimes we also get new invigorating ideas when we do the process. And then comes the let's say, fourth step, which is, of course, the most crucial. That's the implementation and systemizing it and following up continuously, because that's the only way to make it a long-term plan, but also implementation for it.
And getting that cycle working, exactly right. It then should continue. What we're noticing is people finish that session on a high. They're getting there, and it's the learning pit, which, if you want to go to some of the academic frameworks about it. But then you hit problems and challenges as you implement. You run out of momentum and you stop. And again, who's going to keep that moving? Well, one of the conclusions we're coming from, and that's what I'm saying is Back to the Future, it's actually the boards should be driving a lot of this. They should have more knowledge and ability to do that. And that's not what we're finding today. To give you an idea, when people go through that process, what's the best thing? I know Kaiser did a summary of all of these couple of hundred people who did it, and structure. It stands out. I now have a structure from how I'm going to manage. Inspiration. New ideas of how to think about digital, to understand it. And actually the alarm bells to actually take action. And then knowledge, having a customer focus. Now, when you look at this, bar a couple of the things like new ideas, and make it easy for them to understand, that's actually just taking them through a process. There's very little tech here. Now, for credibility, we need to do it. So we do an awful lot of actually implementation work. That's why I'm up to my neck sometimes in Shopify or Amazon or email tech, because that's the stuff I do a lot of. But to get other people on the track, it's not so much about that. It's very much about the principles, the strategy. You know, if we were looking at this list, given we're talking about nothing to do with digital strategy for growth, it's actually about sorting out your game plan for your business. Not that different. And this is where most companies are today. It's what we're seeing. What I try and do, and this is where I spend a lot of my time, is to work on a business design, because I think every company should have one. This is happening regardless, even if you don't have one, and most don't, but it's happening anyway. They're just buying from your competitors, or they don't even know you exist. And when you do get some traffic, you're getting into your site or your social in some cases, you have to have some engagement mechanism. Why should they contact you? Why should they talk to you? Some will buy. It's tiny, 1 to 3% usually. The majority are considering, who are you? Does this really work? Do you answer the question, is this for me or not? Most don't. Most don't even realize that's a big question. And then there's a follow-up, and some buy. The majority won't. But usually this is between this one and this other one that I'll show in a minute, it's about 3 to 1 times this one. The instant purchase is about a third of the other two, roughly speaking. And then the repurchase. And then the survey to get more sales. Existing businesses, this is where you spend the time, because this is where the money is. There's only a few companies that doesn't have a resale or can't leverage existing clients to get new ones. There's only a few. The vast majority can. Whereas startups, pretty much a lot of focus here. And this is the question we all need to be answering. And this is where, to me, the boards aren't asking this question often enough. So when your client sees you, so let's say you're on the board of a company, or you want to be on the board of a company, they're clients. When they see them, do they answer this question or not? More often than not, the answer is no. So how do you fix that? Therein lies one of your principles. Therein lies a train of thought that you can drive marketing through a business for the next 6 months. It directs pretty much everything when you start thinking like this. Because every company is trying to build a system like this. I can tell you these don't exist. You're trying, that's the word here. We'd all love this to be as smooth and simple as this. The more you know about how a business design works, the more you realize that. The more naive you are, the more you think it will work smoothly like this. There's always bumps. Doesn't matter who's doing the work. So what I did is I put a framework above it. It's not what we're talking about today, but this is how to break it down. You structure the problems. Because if you've got 20 things to do, how do you prioritize? How do you understand? This is how we help people understand where they are and what they're doing or can do as a framework. But it's all based on these things. Growth principles. If people know you, they're 3 times more likely to buy from you. Doesn't mean that you can't sell without them knowing you. You can. It just means the offer has to be stronger. the pains have to be higher. But on average, it's 3 times. Get traffic that'll buy. An awful lot of traffic out there that is, not people who are going to spend money. And then there's no use to you. Provide a reason to take contact. And this is from the client's point of view. Why should they put their hand up and say, oh, that's interesting? Tell me more. What's the mechanisms you have? Encourage action. Be easy to buy from. Encourage a reason to review, which helps you be known. And encourage consumption. Now, when I did the first framework, actually, I didn't have encourage consumption on there. Quite a few other things. Build trust, I didn't have on there. Because I'd started it more from the tech side. More from how do you set up a flow. But I began to find out that actually the bigger reasons are the ones that are not on there. They're the softer stuff. They're the principles that'll drive the rest. So every company should be trying to build this. And to me, in a board meeting or a management team meeting, this helps you give direction. Where are we strong? Where are we weak? How can we make it better? How can we grow the business? There's too little of that going on. The other part here, because we know we need to do a session that you can get some ideas from to bring back home. Years ago, actually, I did a session on 3 engines for growth because I like to see the world in simplistic terms. So I like 1 in every stage because it drives things. So 1 in lead gen, 1 in lead to sale, and 1 in the after sale. That's all you need to have. And examples are review engine. So if you say in your business, we need to have 20% of people who have bought from us giving us a review. That's your target, so you have to achieve it. If you start getting reviews, you're going to get more testimonials, you're going to get more repurchases, you're going to get more people talking about you. So that's what I mean by an engine. You just have to focus on one thing. It'll have implications throughout the business. Sales engine, which basically means taking leads to sales. I focus there on a follow-up system. What's your follow-up mechanism? Because follow-up is where the money is in sales. Anyone who does sales knows this. First time usually doesn't work. Second time, third time. It's in your 10th call, maybe. 10th email. So what is that system you've got? And then to get it all going, you need some sort of engagement mechanism. So when I see your business, how do I put my hand up? Now I'd start with 1. If you've 1 in each of these stages, you can change your business dramatically. This gets leads into the business. This turns leads into sales, and this turns customers into advocates and finds more customers. That's how it works. Again, no tech here. Tech will enable these things. Now I know why I'm putting so much effort into my engagement mechanism. Yeah. Now I know why, for example, it could be webinars as an engagement mechanism. That's one of ours. We use in B2B a lot. The simple reason they work. For B2C companies, I do widgets a lot. I do surveys, I do quizzes. That was what was at most of yesterday with a perfume company, with perfume creds. It works. Gets people to put their hand up and tells us what's going on so as we can then see if they're interested in buying. This is how you build a business. The tools come very much second. And there's 2 principles here. And I've taken them from quotes from 2 people. Social selling, Tim Hughes is one of the best. He's been at it a long time. He's not just a person who showed up late. He's actually at it for years. I'd say he must be at least 10 years. And one of the things that struck me here was how people buy, and digital sales being a reaction to how people buy rather than the other way. A lot of people have it the other way around. They think, oh, we're selling digitally, therefore people are going to buy digitally. I still remember, because we used to do TV ads and print ads. I still do like print. I still remember when search came along. And I still remember when we started doing search on Google for the first time. It's fabulous. People are looking for us. It's new. I know we all forget this at this stage. Whereas in the past, we were chasing customers, putting ads in print media, hoping they'd read it and take an action. I tell you, it's an awful lot nicer when they're looking for you. Hence, brand-based search is a big implication here. That's not for today's session. That's another session all on its own. But it's a reaction to how they buy. Our biggest job, and I would like, actually, maybe I should just do it and print off a couple of baseball caps, because I think every board member should have this imprinted on their baseball cap. How is your business joining the conversation going on in the mind of your prospective customer? To make the difference between sales and no sales, leads and no sales. That's from Matt Sykes. Matt Sykes is a good salesman. He wrote a book during COVID. Actually, great book. And that was the most important thing for me. We use these quite a bit, Givy, in our sessions to get people to think and see what are they doing.
And every time we actually hear it in different contexts, you start to think about it and reflect on, okay, well, how does it work today? And one thing that comes to mind today in terms of the context that we're talking about here today, in terms of management and board members, and I think board members, and I'm not sure exactly how many of our audience here today does have a board role or position or is aspiring to join the board. But one thing that has stuck with me, I worked with several boards through this past, I would say 3 to 4 years, both related to digital, but also in other contexts. And one thing that stuck with me from a very highly engaged board professional here in Sweden, he mentioned that once I joined the board that he was serving at that point in time, I realized very quickly how little knowledge we all had jointly about the business.
Yeah.
Meaning not just the product or the service or the team and everything around it, but actually how do we sell? How do we create? How do we make business out of it? So once he identified that and knew that everyone had very little knowledge, and to be frank, why do they have little knowledge? Well, they spend about, I would say, 8 to 10 meetings throughout the year to discuss the future of the business from a strategic perspective as a board. They don't see the day-to-day and what's going on and how. So one of the actions that they did, and it's still with me today, was to actually arrange their board meetings, which was a natural touch point for everyone, at a customer's location. So they would take a key account, they would schedule a board meeting, and they would have their board meetings there at the location. And they would also ask either the CEO of that company or a representative to come and share their business goals and what they wanted to achieve, just to understand what the conversation was inside of their customer's mindset. And it's such a great connection here to Matt Sykes' quote, because that's exactly what they were doing. By that simple tweak in terms of where the location was for their board meetings, they were able to understand what was going on inside the customer's perspective.
And then as the board, if they take actions on it, they can bring it back into the company.
Sure.
Because that's often the problem, that it's on the side. Everyone nods their head and says, yeah, that's great. And then nothing happens.
Yeah.
Whereas in this case, the board would actually take the action because they kind of own it at that stage. Yeah. And I'm coming back to this because this is the business we're actually in. It's on marketing your business. And yet we're seeing all the problems, right? We're seeing companies who can't sell. We're seeing companies who are rating themselves 4.7 out of 10. We're seeing companies who need more sales. And it's not just an economy thing. Because I know in Sweden, the economy has been down for quite some time. This isn't an economy thing. I've tracked it since 2017. We've tracked this. And the numbers aren't changing. We had a dip, actually a bit of a dip last year. Companies were getting a bit worse in terms of their rating of themselves in sales and marketing. A little bit better this year. Now it's on the same as it was 2022. But it's very static. And what it really takes, and I'm struck by this one, this is Mark in the UK. I did a number of sessions with them. It's an ISO company. It's really good approach. Actually, really like how they work and what they do. And what he felt was it completely rewired his head. And we had a lot of one-to-one sessions on trying to build their sales and marketing system and turning them around. But it takes that. So who's going to do this? You know, we can't do this for every client over 6 months. It's not possible. So we need a bit of a system change. And one of the reasons we're here today is we'll have some board members and managers here who may want to take this next step, because then You can do that with 2 companies, 3 companies. You don't have to have me or Givy in every single one. It doesn't work. It's not possible to scale, right? I'm coming to this conclusion, and I actually would probably highlight that marketing is not understood, including by a lot of marketeers who are not really marketeers. The amount of training they have and thought process they have tends to be lacking because it's not in the center or core of the business. Lots of tactics, and AI over the past year is actually adding an awful lot of noise. It doesn't change the fundamentals. Companies are still trying to sell some stuff. Now they're just producing more content faster and cheaper. Still crap. So it doesn't really matter if you're doing it 100 times the rate, you're still doing the wrong stuff. And that's what we feel is happening more and more. So we kind of need a change here in order for this to happen. And for businesses to actually put this at the core and understand how to actually do that. This is how we do it. It very much sets the context, how people buy. And then this part is really important. The words we've picked here: empower, support, not take over. It is the easiest thing in the world to take over a sales system, put everything in place, then the company does not understand why it is the way it is. I can put my hand up. I've done it on numerous occasions over the past 20 odd years because it is quicker. But if the company themselves don't feel it, the results are no use because they don't know why they got them. It's almost like people who buy leads. You don't know where they come from. So you don't have a system. So the empowerment is important, the support. And then when Givy and I were talking about this a couple of weeks ago, it comes back to, what's a board do? Support, help, empowers the staff. Kind of this sort of stuff is what they should be doing, right? They're just not doing it for marketing and sales, is what I find. They're doing it for all kinds of other things, especially finance. Finance feels like it's taken over here. Regulations. But you won't have finance and you won't have to be compliant because you'll have no bloody business unless your sales and marketing is working. So to me, it's a little bit upended here. So that should be set somewhat straight. Structure. This is what's really all about. For discussions, priorities, and planning, and committing to, well, actually, we do want sales and marketing as the core. We want to be positioned in our space as being the go-to company for whatever it is we do. And that won't happen because you have the best product. That'll only happen if you make it happen. That's one thing we're very clear on. It's one of the mistakes we see a lot of the small to medium-sized companies making. They think, we've got the best product in the world, people should queue up. Yeah. There's no line.
Edward, one thing I want to go back to a little bit of how this process is designed as well in terms of the structure is the pyramid that you have illustrated in previous slides, which I think is a perfect way to kind of illustrate the process, because you do have to really take concrete actions related to this, whether that is a digital mechanism that you were talking about before that can be automated through a tool or a methodology or a process, or if you're actually spending time on really fine-tuning some of the pieces, whether that's the sales or the follow-up or whatever it might be. And I think that in today's environment, like you said, we're so blinded by the tools that we don't really see of what is actually working. And in Swedish terms, there's a concept called in Swedish, to play the ball on the right foot, which is football terminology, which is what I'm brought up with. And I really like that concept, because if you know how your customers think, how they act, well, then you're going to adapt yourself and play the ball exactly where they want it, on their right foot or their left foot. And that really is the concept of understanding how your customer thinks, by knowing and anticipating how they're going to think, how they're going to act, and a little bit being on that ball and trying to drive that. So, and sometimes it can be illustrated exactly like this maze and the way things are moving ahead. You never know. By just being curious and kind of understanding it, I think as a C-suite, a management member, or a board member, you just have to stay curious on how that business operates. And once you ask, you will understand more and more.
Yeah, and having that game plan.
Yeah.
Because if you don't go out and play any game without a game plan. You know your competitors. And yet in business, we often measure our competitors, but not understand what's really going on, and we ignore our clients. And these are the symptoms. Disjointed actions we see a lot of. We see a lot coming in. I've just spent 20,000 euros on an ad campaign. I just spent 100,000 crowns on a new website. There's no results. Because things are a bit disjointed. There is no plan. It's not clear. Lots of buzzwords and ends up with frustration. This is what we're seeing all the time. And that's the sort of stuff that has to change. Because the companies we find need more help and support. There is no other help and support out there. I think there's a lot of, it's a different conversation to be had, but I see a lot of help for startups. I see very little help for companies who have made it, as it were, and want to kick on and do better. It's pretty much non-existent. There's a gap there. Who's going to do it? Well, actually, the companies have to do it themselves. And who can help drive them forward? Well, actually, we think that board members have a role within that to try and help. Yeah.
Edward, as you're transitioning into the 10-step process, I thought that I'd share a little bit, because I have to, unfortunately, leave the audience here. But I think that this is the main message, I think, from this. We often perceive that as board members, we should not be engaged and have a distinct, let's say, role than the operations of the business. And I do think that's valid. But I do think that there is a base level of understanding and basically understanding the business mechanisms that we need to have. And that is something that each board member needs to consider and evaluate. Do we have that? And if we don't, how can we increase it? One example that I mentioned was to organize board member meetings and events at clients. But I also think to actually have an open dialogue with, let's say, the sales manager or the marketing manager to understand the business, how it operates. And time after time, you see the CEO and the chairman or chairwoman communicating about that. But the rest of the board members, unfortunately, do not have that same share of knowledge sharing. And I fully support this statement that board members do have a role of understanding the business and having that knowledge, not just the industry expertise.
Exactly. And driving it within the business is right. Yeah. We were asked a lot, and there's one person I can thank for this. Her name is Birgitta. I won't give her last name. And she kind of drove me a bit mad because she kept asking me the same questions. And it was basically, okay, so what do I do? There's all this digital stuff out there. There's all this marketing stuff out there. So what do I do? And I said, well, you have to work it through. There's no shortcuts. And she said, yeah, fine. But what do I do? It reminds me of somebody asking, how do I get rich? And the simple answer to that is pretty much choose rich parents. That's the easiest way, right? Especially in today's day and age. Again, it doesn't help. So I worked through this and I realized I'm actually not helping her. And I came back time after time. I thought, okay, so I actually changed how I did this. I said, okay, in my situation, what do I do when I face a client? Well, it's very easy. I go straight away and think, okay, is this going to be tough or is this relatively easy? So I got through a number of steps. Some of them are pretty much automatic at this stage because I've been doing it quite a while. But then I started mapping it out and I created what I call the 10-step program. It actually was 12. Then I realized that's a whole different program. So we changed it to a 10-step program. And it's things you look at. But for today's session, I'm actually not going to go through those. I'm going to go through two different lists which are based on them. And one is action lists, it's like items. And one is more an approach. And you'll see the distinctive difference. So knowing clients, most companies don't know them well enough. Thanks, Givy. I know you have to head off. Great. Thanks for joining today, and we'll see you again soon. Most don't. It's the root cause of a lot of problems, but it's not where anyone wants to start. Getting the right traffic, getting attention, knowing how to engage clients and leads. Are you getting prospects or leads, and knowing the difference is really important. Is there a follow-up system in place? Are we getting reviews? Have we surveyed clients? And I usually have 3 surveys. If I find people are not using email very much, I think this is an easy client. If they haven't surveyed their clients recently, this is an easier client. We can actually turn around sales fairly quickly because there's a few things you're beginning to do. Now, when I look at it from the other side, the approach, having a game plan, being easy to buy from, helping clients consume, basically use the product they've bought. How do you do this? Are you getting repurchases? That's not a measure we have. Are customers leading to new customers? So these are bigger questions. This is the sort of stuff a board can ask, can get involved with. A lot of these actions drive the success of the approach. Now I have 10, and I usually blend the 2 together into a 10-step system. But these are the questions you have to cover. Now, if you've never done this, it can be hard. For me, this is intuitive at this stage because I'm doing it from, I suppose my first online was 2007, 2008. So it's near 20 years of this. So it becomes more intuitive. So you need to get an approach for this. And this is the sort of things board owners and members don't need to do all this. But to have the conversation, they need to know certain things. That's what we're finding. You don't need all the tech skills. But you can ask this question, what's the game plan? And when someone gives it to you, that you know what it means. And you know the weaknesses. And you ask the questions. This is how we can begin to build companies in a market-based approach. Advertising, it should be to scale. It's one of the biggest issues we have in the industry today. People are losing a lot of money with advertising because they don't understand how to set it up. They don't have the principles in place. We do actually have a whole program on that. And when people go through this, begin to understand, wide range of companies. Somex in Lund and Ogilvy and Kais actually worked quite a bit with them. Also with TimeSync, Gunnell direct to consumer, with MBT shoes. It's all about getting the game plan. And it just takes time to get in place to begin to make it work. We find this works every time. And we find, I think there is a bigger role for members to play. Now, this is where we come in, and I do have an offer here. So if hopefully you're interested in that, we think we can help you with this, that you have a bigger role to actually play. And this program is for board members and advisors, primarily. Those that want to be obviously more active and those that want to help lead a business. This is an important aspect to it. As you'll see, it is probably the best value for money we've ever done, and I'll tell you why as we go through it. We help companies to get a strong foundation in digital strategy for sales. That's the deal. So they can have the confidence and competence to participate in the conversation. They'll have the insights to, again, participate in the conversation and help the companies go forward. And having that confidence, to me, is one of the most important things. So we actually did 2 tracks, and the Board Ready one is a new one. And the reason I've done it is I spent in the autumn, I had 20 companies come through different programs. I did the advertising for sales, I did website for sales, and I did email for sales. 3 programs, 2 weeks intensive, 2 sessions a week. So over 5 to 6 hours focused just on their company. That works really well. So, well, actually, one of the easiest ways in here is for board members to get a kind of a board ready, simple version. And we did the same, 5 one-to-one sessions, and use the time to cover the essentials and focused on either cases or the business you're working with. It is insightful when you begin to work through it systematically. And this is ideally done over 2 weeks. And the intensity is quite important. So we'd often start and have a Monday, Wednesday, Friday session. The following week could be a Tuesday, Thursday. That's often how we do it. You really get a feel for that, and you understand how things fit together. I rather do that type of thing than do it over one day. Over one day, you don't get the same level of learning and understanding. And then the follow-up sessions can be done because nobody wants to be left in the lurch. Now that's at a ridiculous price during March. It's 500 euros or 5,000 crowns to go through that program. And it's very much priced similar to the stuff we did in the autumn with email for sales and website for sales. Because it's a way for you to get into it. And you can say, okay, yes, this is for me, I want to do more. Or you'll say, you know what, I have enough now. Because getting into this, understanding this is what's important. We then have the board certified, which is a 10-session program, certified over 10 hours, again, one-to-one sessions. I prefer to do this over a 5-week period. It can be done as an accelerated one. We actually will have that from May, which is a 2-day session. There's deeper learning when you do it over many weeks. I actually used to do a leading digital program, and which I now just do one-to-one program, and that is over 10 weeks. And you get an hour and basically an hour and a half a week. It means by the end of it, you really understand. That's why I like those types of programs. The certified one will be 1,500 euros. Again, relatively cheap for what you get. You then can be able to leverage my knowledge to work within boards, to help boards get sales. Now, if anyone's out there, one of the most important things that companies need is more sales, and your marketing training can help you help them. So it should pay it back fairly quickly. The details of the program, probably not that important today. This is the overall one, and we basically take you through the whole concept of digital sales and marketing, how it works, and into understanding business design, the importance of it. How do you structure it? Lots of different examples and how it works through. I like to go through the 3 different steps: lead to sale, lead generation, and after sales. And then the business design, go through a lot of the details. It's funny, when I do a business design, every single company ends up being different. On the face of it, it looks they're the same. But the reality is they're very different, because when I'm saying there's an email follow-up, well, what's in that? When we're doing events, are they leads or the prospects? How do we engage them next? When we're doing a survey or a quiz. So the detail here really matters, and what suits the business, how it works, and how it actually gets clients then to buy. And that's what you'll understand. We're not building it in these sessions, but you'll understand what you're trying to get to. And then obviously the support. If you're back home and you're thinking, I've got questions about it, then you just basically email me in, and we're quite happy to advise. All these topics are covered, be the advertising, be the lead generation, be the AI. I think there's a huge opportunity for companies to implement AI in a large language model to engage with their clients. And I don't mean the old chatbot. I mean answering their questions based on the content they have. I'm fairly sure the days of websites are numbered. We still will have them and need them. But why should I struggle to read 20 pages, 100 pages, when I've just got questions that I want you to answer? Right now, you can do that by putting a chatbot on your site in the right way. Too many of the current chatbots are actually really poor. But the large language model, the ChatGPT style ones, based on your content, huge advantages there. So we cover all that kind of stuff. How to use social rather than social using you, and then advertising, how to set up advertising for success. All of these things are covered, so you can get a good feeling for how they actually work. This can be for existing board members or for newly qualified ones who actually want to join a board. And on our conversation last week, Givi and I were talking about it. Is it for managers or boards or advisors? Do you know what? It's for those who want to support. You can see the problem. Companies are not doing what they could. So those who want to get involved and help them do that, this will help you enormously. There's nothing out there like this. We see people coming out of universities and they've covered the basics, but they don't have the experience. And the experience is what matters here. How do you deal with all the challenges that are coming up? This is more detail on the options. Board ready, then there's the certified over the 10 weeks. And then from May, we're actually going to do a group session. and that's over 2 days, and that'll be in the south of Sweden as our plan for that one. When we go with Givy and Kaiser will join me when I do those types of sessions. And from April, it's going to the regular prices because 15 is really cheap for what you get, because you have direct access to me when I do this, and anyone who's worked with me will see how that actually works. If any of you on here have, you will know it in the same way, just like I was doing yesterday with the Shopify stuff and with the Amazon stuff. You're knee deep in it, and it means you actually help get a result. So if you're interested in this, let us know if there's any questions here. I know I embed the questions I get in via email into the session. If there's any questions, happy to take them now. Most people actually do these privately in an email, especially sessions like this. So I can leave you be today. If you're interested in this, then just get in touch. So email back the emails you get, or if you're watching this in the live session, just email Kaiser at Digital Scorecard, and she will organize a 20-minute session to understand your needs, what you're after, and see does this fit. It's pretty much how we operate. So listen, thank you very much for joining, and I'll thank Givy again for joining us here today, and we will see you again soon. Thanks. Bye now.